Welcome to the Podcast Interview Marketing Show, where we help high-level category designers, nonfiction authors, and service professionals turn listeners into leads. I'm your host, Tom Schwab, and today we're diving deep into one of the most timely and transformative topics in business: how to lead and innovate in what our guest calls the age of turbulence. Joining us today is John Rossman. Now, John is the former Amazon executive. He's a renowned keynote speaker and author of some great books like Big Bet Leadership, The Amazon Way, and Think Like Amazon. John doesn't just talk about AI. He challenges us to go deeper, to think strategically and act with agility. In this episode, we're going to explore how Amazon's culture of working backwards, durable customer needs, and the three-layer AI strategy can help you lead smarter and make better business decisions. You'll learn why mimicking yesterday's logic, well, that might be your biggest risk, and how podcast interviews can become your lab for innovation, experimentation, and customer connection. Whether you're building a personal brand or scaling a great business, you'll want to listen to this for the insights packed into this episode. Let's dive in. So many people just add the word or the initials AI to everything, right? People will click on it. It increases the value of a company, whatever it is. But John, you don't even talk about that this is the age of AI. And I thought that was so amazing. Can you explain what you mean by this is the age of turbulence?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I write a newsletter called the Digital Leader Newsletter. It really is like my playpen for like thinking through things and everything. And the cool thing is other people like reading it, but I would write it literally if it was just for myself and everything. But I think I lead off that particular newsletter with kind of the quote from Peter Drucker, which is like the most dangerous thing to do in the ages of turbulence is to use yesterday's logic. And that is at the essence of so many things that I believe in and the work that I get to do. And at the end of the day, I think what organizations need to do is they are way too risk averse. And so I'm a former Amazon executive, and the things we learned at Amazon are about like strategic patience with everyday execution. And because we would evaluate programs and investments over a much longer period of time, and because we understood that it was going to be a journey of experimentation, we could do things that other companies couldn't even approach. And I think that that's the mindset that we really need to lean into on AI, which is understand the problem you're trying to solve, have an ambitious and described future state of what you're trying to do there, and then design the experiments to get there. And that is about enterprise agility. That is the fundamental underlying structure and framework of a book I wrote called Big Bet Leadership. But, this age is fundamentally, there are going to be companies that are advantaged by AI and that are disadvantaged by AI. And then the number one piece of advice I have is be an active skeptic, which both words are important. Be active, like do things, run experiments, but prove them out before you commit big to them.
Yeah. And it's the days of strategic planning. It's like when we're going to say, this is where we're going to be 3 or 5 years from now. I don't know if I can say 3 or 5 months from now, what it's going to look like. And so it's that idea of in the storm, right? That's what you do in the storm makes the biggest difference. That Peter Drucker quote, as you were saying that, it's like, yeah, every ship's going to have storms that it goes through, but the captain's either going to make it through or capsize it. And it's not the storm.
The converse question to ask is, what isn't going to change, right? And so, there's typically in a business a fundamental set of why your customers love you, why your customers engage with you. And the form factor, the delivery mechanism, the distribution, those things may change, but the fundamental customer need may not change. I got to travel a few times with Jeff Bezos, and I remember this one discussion we were having at a big partner of ours, and somebody asked him like, hey, how does Amazon decide kind of like, what to experiment on, what to innovate on and everything? He goes, well, I believe in kind of durable customer needs. And he goes, there's 3 of them for Amazon. And it's I can't imagine a world where a customer wants higher prices. I can't imagine a world where a customer wants less selection. I can't imagine a world where a customer wants slower delivery. And we may try a lot of things that work or don't work, but I think fundamentally those things will always be consistent. So if I if I steer according to those kind of North Stars, I'm always kind of going in the right direction, even if one thing doesn't work. You learn from that thing. And that's what I would be thinking about in these times is like, what doesn't change? What is your core brand promise, your value proposition, your customer? What problem do you solve for them? And how do you do that better and better and better? That's the essence of innovation and progress.
Yeah. And I like how you did the negative on that. Right. Because sometimes it's easy to, it's hard to say, this is what I believe. Right. But it's more powerful to say, this is what I reject. Right. And get the clarity.
Yeah. And, yes, AI is changing a lot of things. AI, the capabilities of it are changing super fast. And that makes it even more important to have a grounded orientation into, your business, your market, your customer, and a perspective of what the future is, but then work back to, okay, so what do we do now in order to get started? Because it's so easy to get frozen along so many different aspects of that journey.
Yeah. And that's start with the where you want to be and work your way back.
I mean, that is the essence of Amazon's innovation process and mindset. It's called working backwards, right? Start with the end in mind, start with the customer in mind, work backwards, have a distinct perspective on the problem that you're trying to solve today, your hypothesis for the future state, and then figure out your path towards getting there.
Yeah, you introduced me to the concept of the bitter lesson. And I know it came from someone else, but that idea of old thinking and trying to apply it there has never worked. And especially in AI, it's been proven over and over not to work. And as I read that, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm trying to reprove this all the time. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So that particular, and it's a theory, it's a hypothesis. Like, so okay. Don't take this as like a truism, but the hypothesis comes from an AI researcher by the name of Rich Sutton. And what his proposition is that, trying to mimic how people solve problems with AI is the wrong approach. The right approach is to just understand the inputs and the optimization that you're trying to get and then throw more compute at it. And so the AI techniques that are just like throw more compute, bigger models at it, those tend to be working better. And the theory is those will be the winners. And where we make mistakes is when we try to like, well, this is how I think about something, the steps, the rules. And you try to get AI to mimic those things. And so how do we apply this today? I think it really is about understanding the job that you're trying to get done. What are the inputs? What are the desired outputs? And you have to get descriptive about these things, like not casually, but design them, engineer them, and understand in what rank order do I want these outputs? What's my optimization? And then just let AI do its thing and try to run bigger models at it versus trying to script the moves like you would with if you have an employee or a workflow and you try to make every if, then, but statement along the way. That's the mistake that people are making with AI.
Yeah, well, and that makes sense because I think we even make it with in person, right? On analog, all the rest of that. You hire a great employee and then you say, this is what I want you to do, step 1, 2, and 3. Well, they're never going to be any better than you were with it because, you're using them like a mule, like for their back, not for their mind. Better to say, this is how I've done it, right? This is what I want to get. Or, the people that will hire a professional, right? You'd never go to your accountant and say, great, this is how I want you to do the taxes. No, you hire them for their intellect and not tell them every step. And we do it with people and with AI.
But give them your expectations. Like at the end, this is like, what the expectations are to it. But it's so natural to try to script the moves with AI. And that's the mistake that we're learning, both short term and long term. Again, it's a hypothesis about AI. And so but I think in general, like it's proving out, because the alternative is all of this heavy scripting, heavy data labeling that goes on, and that's really hard to do. It's expensive as all get out, right? It's much easier to just throw the data and constraints at it, tell it what to optimize for, and throw bigger and better models at it.
And I'm excited to sort of jump into an example here of, we've talked about before, of something that we tried here locally. But as you talk about AI, right? I love your pancake analogy, right? There's different layers. There's layer 1, 2, and 3. And I think I get the sugar buzz or the maple syrup buzz at level 1. And I think there's a lot of times that's where I stop. What do you mean by that level 1? Yeah,
well, I think like any journey, you have to think through like the full journey, and what most companies are doing today. There are a few leading edge, but the bulbous, the vast majority of companies are kind of at a layer 1 AI strategy. And that's where individually we are applying AI into the job that we're doing today. And we're getting a nice productivity buzz. Some companies are doing that consistently. Most companies, actually, people are using AI very inconsistently across themselves. So even within kind of that layer 1 of the pancake stack, doing things consistently, sharing best practices, having the right policies and rails in place, like that's really important. But that's just a single pancake, right? The next pancake is actually re-engineering and reinventing how workflows happen within an organization. That actually doesn't start with the application of AI. That actually starts by rethinking, guess what? Once again, the inputs of what the work is and what the outputs that we want. Every job, every company is essentially a transformation mechanism, right? There's inputs and there's outputs to it. We add value to it. And understanding actually what that job is, saying what is the most value-added things that we do, what are the non-value-added things that we do, and then applying AI with that zero-based design approach is how you actually really improve workflows with AI. But then there's a third layer to the pancake stack. And that third layer is about most businesses, not every business, but most businesses have a secret, a constraint, a topic, a wicked problem that if they could solve for that, it really unleashes something dynamic in the business. You've already given me a couple of examples in your business of like a truly wicked problem that you dedicated your efforts to, like, I gotta crack this nut, and you were dogged about it and you stayed after it. You used AI, and because you figured out like, oh, here's the answer to the secret, now you're going to be able to do things in your business that no amount of kind of bottoms up, improvement would have gotten to, and everything. And that's what I think. Those 3 layers are the essence of what I believe is a good AI strategy for a business. Short-term productivity hits, reinvent the way that work actually gets done. That's layer 2. And layer 3 is like, solve the critical challenge that's in the business and be dogged about that.
Yeah, and I can see where we've done that in all of it, right? The little AI things that have helped people be more productive, right? It's almost like sugar, right? Oh, this is so cool. It's fun.
Rewrite this email for me. Yeah. It's like an automatic move that everybody should be doing. So yeah,
and then the workflows. But the one that we had shared before is one of the great questions I've had for the last 10 years is, why do some hosts say yes to our guests and other ones don't, right? And, we talk about it all the time and everybody's got their opinion. And the opinions that usually come up are recency bias, right? Well, I had this this host that said yes, and I put an emoji on it. Okay, so that must be it. No, there's not enough. That's a data point, not data. And so we've talked about this for years. And then when AI came, I thought, well, there's got to be a way to do this. And I spent hours and hours of frustration of, we're a Gmail company, right? And so we could go to Google Vault, pull all of the Gmails from all of our team members that do this, compare them, right? And it never worked because the files were too big, whatever. And I probably have spent 10 hours with AI trying to get that to work. Well, ChatGPT agent came out, right? And the first morning it came out, I'm like, oh, let's give it a try. And so I said, I want you to go to Google Vault. I want you to look at this quarter's worth of emails that were sent by these people. You don't tell me who it was or anything like that, just for confidentiality. But tell me why some people said yes, why some people said no, and some people guessed us, right? It was the shortest prompt there. And then it went off and started to work. And the first time I'd seen agent work. And so I saw it moved from screen to screen. And then I started seeing it scroll emails. John, we're talking about thousands, probably 10,000 emails that it kept going through. And I was like, how long is this going to take? It was, I think, about 30 minutes later. And it came and said, here are the big themes that I saw, right? Subject lines, when it was sent, how long the email was. And then I'd ask follow-up questions. Well, how about follow-up emails, all the rest of this? And, it gave us stuff to work with for our team. And it was like, hey, that question we've always been asking? Well, here's some answers. And people would start to say, yeah, I believe that. That makes sense. And now the next step is, how can we drill down into that, right? Does it matter for old podcasts, new podcasts, different verticals and stuff like that?
How was working with ChatGPT agent, other than the time it took to respond, how was it different than working with normal ChatGPT? Is the prompt the same type of prompt, or do you prompt or work with an agent differently?
The prompt was probably even less specific, right? And like you said, and literally this was the first morning it came out. I was like, let's see what it does. The prompt was shorter. I said, this is what I want you to do. And this is the answer that I'm trying to get out of it. And before, the limitation is that I had to move all of these files over to Google Vault and then download the file and then try to upload it. And I would always, it would tell me that there was too much data there, right? And it became a manual process. If I would have gotten it to work, it would have been mind-blowing, right? Because this is a question we've had for 10 years. And it's now that we could do that, it brings up so many other questions we have. And, our mutual friend, Christopher Lockhead, talks about, the data flywheel and stuff like that. Now we're looking at it, and we're an Airtable company, right? For 8 years, every interview, all the information is on Airtable. Right now, Airtable's got their Omni AI. And so we're looking and saying, what can we do to mine that data? We'd always look at it on a global basis, but now we should be able to use the computing power of the knowledge we already have to find better answers.
Yeah, that's cool. That's great.
You had talked about sometimes we're just looking for short answers and missing really the transformational potential of AI. And I look at that and say, what should we be focusing on? The little wins or the big things that are going to transform the industry?
So I'm an industrial engineer by background. And one of the Bibles of first principles thinking, of understanding how a factory or any business runs, is what's called the theory of constraints. And what the theory of constraints is all about is bottlenecks. And what it fundamentally says is that a system, a factory, the end to end, will only improve throughput if you actually address the bottleneck of that system. And so part of the challenge of developing an AI strategy is you're going to have a ton of good ideas, and everything, right? And that's a good thing, but it's still a problem, because it's like you only have so much capacity and focus to actually do hard things really well. And so I apply this with my clients of like, we create a portfolio of like all the things we could do. But one of the key lens that you look this through is through the theory of constraints. What is the actual bottleneck in the business? Because if we don't address the true problem in the business, the true bottleneck in the business, then we may be creating some sub-optimizations, but we're not optimizing the system. We're not optimizing the enterprise. So it's always about in creating some enthusiasm, creating some quick wins, in these ways, but really get at the essence of like, how do I improve the business, the big business, the entire business, not just these little components of it? Because if you don't understand the theory of constraints, the bottleneck in your business, all you're doing is creating a bunch of sub-optimizations. Now, those can be good. You could have some cost improvements or things like that, but you won't fundamentally improve the factory of your business.
Yeah, and as you said that, all I could remember is the book, The Goal.
The Goal by Eli Goldratt. Yeah, that's the classic. Yeah.
That's the classic there. And it's like, if we optimize the wrong thing, all we're doing is starving a machine or making more inventory.
Making more buffer inventory. And that is all about, and what companies do, and good intention people, everybody, but you always get sub-local optimization versus enterprise optimization. So I wrote a book called The Amazon Way. It's about Amazon's 14 leadership principles. Principle number 2 gets at this notion, and it's called ownership. And one of the key to these leadership principles is always in the paragraph description of it. And the paragraph description talks about that a good leader at Amazon never looks to optimize for their optics or their department. They always look to optimize for the enterprise. That's what a good leader does. And that's what this gets to, is we are naturally wired to just like, hey, I'm going to look good. I'm going to create improvements from my department. But what we need to do is think enterprise wide.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that in small business just frustrates the heck out of me, right? It's always that we need more leads. We can get you more leads. We can get you more phone calls. It's like, we're not optimizing.
But if I can't get more podcast hosts to say yes, that's the bottleneck in your business. And so you're attacking the bottleneck in your business.
Yeah. And really what you're optimizing for in a business should be profits, which means value. So if you just have more tire kickers, that doesn't help you. That actually hurts you, right?
Because tire kickers actually do try to add value, and they do that by slowing things down.
Right. And so that's the idea. It becomes a cost. So figure out what you're optimizing for. John, AI is changing so fast. What would you say to somebody that's a small E entrepreneur, right? Not the enterprise level Amazon, but someone that's listening to this podcast. They're using podcast interviews to grow their business. How should they be thinking about AI?
The rule book that we've just been talking about, which is find some great little productivity boosts for how you do your work today, but B, think about what your real ambition is and what's the bottleneck to getting there, and how can AI or a partner, like Interview Valet or some other way to fight through that real constraint in your business.
Yeah. What's ordinary to you is amazing to others. John, thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you? And I highly recommend checking out your Substack, right? I always read those.
Thanks. My Substack is called the Digital Leader Newsletter. You just search John Rossman and you'll find me. LinkedIn, John Rossman. But yeah, the newsletter, it's for free, and I give a once a week kind of dose of how to innovate, how to be a leader that actually moves things forward. And at the end of the day, what I do is I solve really hard problems for my clients.
Yeah, and you do it wonderfully. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom.
What an insightful conversation with John Rossman. If you've been feeling overwhelmed by AI, the market shifts, or just the speed of change, I hope this episode gave you more than information. I hope it gave you a framework. John reminded us that durable customer needs, well, they don't change. People will always want a better price, more choices, and faster service. What does change is how we deliver on that. And podcast interviews are an incredible place to test those approaches. You can share your thinking and connect directly with your ideal audience. So here's the action step. Identify that wicked problem in your business, the constraint that's holding back growth. Then ask yourself, how can I use podcast interviews to experiment, to refine my message, and to attract that right partner or clients? Remember, podcast interviews, they're not about vanity metrics. It's about value. Focus on helping, sharing insights, well, just like John did, and you'll see that leads will follow. And don't forget to check out John's Digital Leader Newsletter on Substack. It's one of my go-tos for staying sharp and strategic. Until next time, keep showing up, serving generously, and scaling with AI.